Hello.
Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dana Pellebon.
Buenos días, good morning. My name is Virginia Gittens Escudero.
We are here to talk a little bit about our organizations, who we are, and why we do this work. So let's jump right in.
Great.
So tell me, Virginia, how did you start this work? What was your journey to the Executive Director of UNIDOS?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. I had to say, I'm very happy to be here with you sharing space.
Same.
And thank you for that question. My journey supporting survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault started about 10 years ago, right? And my passion has been always to help the community in any way possible. And I identified a need in the community, which was survivors needing to support navigating the legal system. That is often overwhelming, frustrating, and especially for communities of color and communities whose language is a barrier. So I was able to join an organization, a local organization, and I have been doing legal advocacy for the last 10 years, and now I am at UNIDOS. I'm very happy to continue the work supporting survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. How about you?
Well, what's funny is that our entry point was actually the same organization. Years ago, I remember opening a phone book, if we remember what those are, opening a phone book to look for resources for a friend of mine, and I found DAYS. That is a local domestic abuse organization here in Madison, and the help that they offered was life-changing to us. Over the years, I kept connecting with DAYS in particular, and ended up joining their board about 12, 13 years ago. And so that started my formal journey of supporting survivors. As the time has gone on, what I found was that in the industry that I was in, I was working with a lot of survivors and people who were unhoused. I worked for about 20 years in the housing industry, working in homeless services the last 10 years, and sexual assault and domestic violence were part and parcel to the women's experiences that I was working with. So in that journey, I got to meet the former ED, and her and I talked about the work, and she offered for me to come over to the Rape Crisis Center and work with the direct client services, because that was some of the work that I had done in my previous job. And the last 3 years has been really focusing what our organization was doing, and in the course of that, she retired, and we went to 2 co-EDs, and now I am the sole executive director, and I'm very grateful to be leading an organization with the incredible amount of community experience that RCC has. This is actually our 50th year here in Dane County. We were started right after Roe v. Wade, and unfortunately have outlived Roe v. Wade, but we are grateful to be able to do the work that we're doing here in the county.
Great, great. So Dana, I think it's a good opportunity also to talk about our services. So what the organizations do, and also what communities we serve, right?
Absolutely.
Do you want to start?
Actually, I'm going to have you start, because the work that you do is important because it is very specific. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. So at UNIDOS, we are considered a dual agency. What that means is that we serve survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault, and I'll add to that human trafficking, with the collaboration of other organizations in the community like Project Respect and RCC. And our core services, which is like crisis intervention services, those are case management. We offer support groups for the community, individual counseling, and we operate the only helpline in Dane County, bilingual helpline in Spanish, 24/7 live. And I want to take the opportunity to send a shout out to all of our staff at UNIDOS, and especially our overnight responders who are there every night, every weekend, every holiday, answering that phone call and making sure that the community have access to supportive services during those times. We also provide legal advocacy, which I have mentioned. It's a really important service and supporting the community. And we also, our other part of our job is prevention and education, which is so important. We need to talk about domestic violence in the community. How does that look like? Because domestic violence and sexual assault is not a personal matter anymore. It's a community matter, right? And we all have a piece of work, something to do to prevent and to raise awareness about violence in our community. And we also engage in system advocacy, right? Advocating for systems and a better treatment for survivors, because survivors deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. How about RCC?
Well, so RCC over the years has transformed a little bit of what they've done. So now we are the only 24-hour crisis response agency in Dane County. So what that means is 24 hours a day, we provide services to survivors that go to the hospital for forensic nurse exams. We also provide services to persons who would like to report to law enforcement. We do provide those services in English and in Spanish, although we are very aware of the importance of UNIDOS's place in that work. And so our job is to support their work as a secondary resource. In addition, we are also out there doing prevention and education. We are in the schools, almost all of the schools in Dane County, middle and high school, where we talk about consent. We talk about healthy boundaries. We talk about healthy relationships and what those look like. And especially for teens, that's an important step in the journey of prevention and eradication of sexual and domestic violence here in our world, quite frankly. We have interactive programs like our Game Changers. The Game Changers are a group of high school students that we work with to build up what advocacy and activism looks like, and they put on a variety of different trainings throughout the year, and they have different projects that they do. Last year, their year-end project was to do a resource guide for trans survivors. So we are working with the high school students to really help them understand where their place is in this work, because all of us have a space in the work to eradicate sexual violence. One of our other interactive programs is our Chimera program. Our Chimera program is a self-defense and self-awareness and bystander intervention program also. I actually took this program back in my 20s. I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, but back in my 20s, I took the Chimera program, and back then I was actually kind of a shrinking violet. I didn't know that I could say no. I didn't know that it was okay for me to set those boundaries, and Chimera really started me on my journey to being who I am today, and that was super important to me. In addition, we are doing education in the community. We do mindfulness work with survivors and mindfulness work on campus. We are on all of the college campuses here in the county. We offer advocacy services along with emotional support, case management. We do Title IX support. We also have licensed clinical therapy. In addition, we have expanded a new program called Safer Bar. We are working with the bars in Dane County to think about what does bystander intervention look like in that space, and what can we do, and what can they as community partners do to work to prevent sexual violence and work to mitigate what it is that they've seen happening in their spaces. In addition, we have licensed clinical therapy and support groups. We run the only queer and trans survivor support group here in Dane County. In addition, we are a part of the CCS program, so for our clients that have specialized needs and need more wraparound care, we do offer that wraparound care. We are in the courts when people do go to court. If they choose to engage with law enforcement and the legal system, we are there with them every step of the way. It is humbling to be able to pick up our phone 24 hours a day and be able to support survivors and say, we're here for you, we believe you, and knowing that they're trusting us enough to share their story with us and trust us with giving them resources and help that they need to move forward in the way that they want to move forward.
Great, so much important work, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that Pearl is also the time to talk about what the community doesn't know about our work, right? And I want to start with confidentiality, right?
Yes.
Many people might be afraid of reaching out because they don't want to be identified, they're scared about sharing their information for many, many reasons, right? They're identifying information, and I want to say both our programs, right, are confidential. Everything that shares with us stays with us.
Yes.
And we respect that confidentiality. Our services and programs are free, right? So there is no cost associated to anyone accessing our services. And I think it's also important to mention that we can support survivors at any stage. And that will never hear from anyone at our organizations us telling you, you need to do this. We're here to support you in any stage, in any, what is that you need, emotional support, economic and financial support when it's possible, right? So we're here to support the community. We're not judging, we're not
Absolutely.
here to judge anyone. And again, emphasizing that our services are completely confidential to anyone accessing services or support through RCC and UNIDOS.
And one of the things I also want to mention is that advocacy is actually a right here in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of people don't know that. You, as a survivor, have the right to have an advocate with you throughout the legal system when you are talking to law enforcement, and through your, if you do decide to go to the hospital for a forensic nurse exam, you have the right to have an advocate there with you so that they can help guide you through the process. They can work to make sure that your rights are being respected. One of the other things that people don't know is that it's not just for survivors. Both of our organizations support the loved ones of survivors. I can't tell you how many times we have had people call to say, this has just happened to my child, my partner. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. So being able to support the people around that survivor is vital, because that support system gives them the leeway to heal in the way that they need to heal. And one of the things to note about that confidentiality that Virginia brought up that's so important is that carries throughout the legal system and the legal process. So it's not just somebody can't call to find out what it is that you said, who is in your family, but if you do decide to go through the court process, what is talked about with your advocate is 100% confidential. That is not something that can be subpoenaed, and that's an important thing to know. We in Wisconsin just codified a bunch of laws in our Constitution called Mercy's Law, and that law gives further protections for victims when they are dealing in the criminal justice system.
Great. And Dana, you mentioned something very important, that that our services are not only there for survivors and also their families, and I think, and the community as a whole, right? Because
Yes.
I think we all have something to learn about how to best support survivors
Yes.
of abuse and violence. We hear a lot of times the community asking why they don't leave an abusive relationship, or blaming what we know as a victim blaming.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there is so much to learn about that, and so much to learn about consent, and that's something that we can start talking about with children at home, right? How those consents look like, in schools, with our families, with our friends. So there is a lot of work that we do in the community to talk about that, right?
Absolutely.
And our doors are open to anyone who wants to learn what is there out there to learn about violence in our community, and how can we prevent it as a community? How can we help raise awareness about violence in our community and how to prevent it? Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, there's so much to add to that. So prevention is a hallmark of the work that we do. Yes, we support survivors once the incident has happened, but we changed our mission statement to we envision a world without sexual violence. Because that's an important thing to envision. We envision a world without oppression, because we know that oppression is interconnected. And we also know that sexual violence and domestic violence are issues of power and control. And so being able to connect with youth, in particular, connecting with children as they're growing up, to talk about what is a healthy dynamic. What does it mean when someone crosses a boundary, and then how do you manage through that? Because that is not something that's intuitive. I was in my 20s before I understood what managing through a boundary for myself was. And we are expecting children to be able to manage those boundaries. And another reason why it is so vitally important that we are reaching people of a younger age is the majority of persons who are sexually assaulted for the first time, that happens before the age of 24. And that's a sobering statistic. It happens before they're 24. And that means that it is very important that the work that we do in prevention in particular centers on the next generation, on the youth who are driving where our culture goes. And it has been heartening to watch the youth in your programs, in my programs, in other programs like with Freedom Inc., who take the mantle up and say, we are not going to accept this. You saw that live in action last year when East High School started a series of walkouts throughout the county because they said enough is enough. And those kids stood up for what it is that they wanted and what it is that they needed. And that's the type of prevention work and boldness that is needed in this work. So let's talk a little bit about communities of color and what their experience is like, and how is it different, and what barriers have you seen when working with communities of color?
Great question, Dana. I think something we have not talked about is that UNIDOS serve specifically communities, Latinx and Hispanic community. However, our doors are open to anyone seeking services. We won't close the door on anyone. But our staff is bilingual, bicultural, Latinx, Hispanic, and we that's the core of our the services we provide to the community. And I think it's something important to know when we talked about barriers, is that not all communities experience domestic violence and sexual violence in the same way. Communities of color have barriers, systematic barriers, that oppress them, and that they discriminate, and makes it more difficult for them to access justice,
Yes.
to access rights, and to access support.
Yes.
it's very different, and it's important that we learn about that. You know, I think something that comes to mind every time that we talked about the Hispanic and the Latinx community is the language barrier. But it goes beyond the language barrier, right? It goes beyond, you know, let's think about immigration. Why, let's ask the question, why do people migrate, right? And what is happening, you know, war, climate change, gun violence in their countries. And we had to be open and empathic and compassionate about that. But many other barriers that we're not aware of. You know, I think the other thing that comes to mind is housing. Housing is a huge barrier. Lack of childcare, lack of affordable legal representation. All those compound, and the other thing, the other reality is that we're not so much aware is like how that intersects, and that how prevents survivors to live an abusive relationship. And I think something I always ask the communities to think about twice when we are asking why a survivor of domestic abuse doesn't leave a abusive relationship or an abusive partner. And let's think about what the environment, and let's think about if that person have everything that they need and their families to be safe.
Yes.
Right? But how about you? What is your response to it?
Yeah, so I'm going to specifically speak about my intersections as a Black queer woman and kind of the barriers that we see. So for every one Black woman that reports, 15 do not. And that's a staggering statistic. And there are complex barriers that interrelate with how Black women perceive and heal from and report sexual violence in particular. So one of the things that I know that I am told all the time is I am a strong Black woman, I have Black girl magic, I have all of these things, and I am the pillar of the community. I am here to protect my Black men. I am here to keep my family going. So in the context of an assault, the messages that I'm hearing are, I need to protect the people around me. I need to be strong. I need to always exude this magical force of excellence without realizing that Black women need that support too. And that there needs to be space carved out for Black women to say, I don't have to be strong in this moment. It's okay for me to accept help. Not only is it okay, but I deserve the same help and the same resources that everyone else does. And that I don't have to protect everyone around me. I can care for myself. And particularly as a queer woman, we know that sexual violence comes on both ends. So within the community and outside of the community, sometimes as hate crimes. And we see that in particular with our Black trans women. Our Black trans women are some of the most unprotected in our country. They are some of the most victimized, and they have the least amount of resources. So as a trans woman who then has to leave a situation and go to a shelter, what does that look like? How opening and inclusive is that space? These are things that they have to worry about that some survivors don't. And so knowing that there are complex things that are happening with a variety of different people depending on their intersections and depending on how oppression has shown up in their lives. So let's talk about what's next for UNIDOS. Where do you see the work going?
Yes. So you know that I'm new to UNIDOS, not to the field, but the UNIDOS as an organization. I have been leading the organization for about a year and a few months, and I think it's important to continue with the legacy that the founders of UNIDOS, how they initiated the organization and advancing the mission, our mission, which is ending the cycles of domestic abuse, ending sexual assault, and strengthening family ties. And we want to continue with that work. I think it is very, very important that we continue with our initiative of prevention and education. Something that we're seeing more and more, it's with the digital age, like how it's important to talk about like how children and youth are spending time in social media. So we have some projects in mind to talk to the community, to come out with the community and talk about the community about that and be aware of that. But also continuing our work with our core services. We want to make sure that the work that we do is sustained throughout the years, and it's here for anyone who needs it. So Sexual Assault Awareness Month is coming up in April, and we hope that our community also helps us raise awareness. So we're gonna be sharing some information about our events. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to learn more about those events in the community. And of course, we'll continue also working on the prevention of domestic abuse, which Awareness Month is in October. However, the time to talk about these topics is the whole year.
Right now,
it's,
that's right.
Right now,
that's
right?
right?
It's not, specifically April or October. We have to talk about this often, and we have to, talk to our organizations, like what is that we need, right? Because we need the support of our community. I often say, this is not a job to do by ourselves. We need our community. We need to, to get together, to exchange ideas,
Yes.
and also to hear from the community about where are we going? What is that our community needs to be safe, right? And for us to provide a safe space for survivors to heal. But about RCC?
Yeah, so last year we did a very large expansion. We used to have one licensed clinical therapist that worked with our staff and our clients to make sure that services were being given in a way that was appropriate for the space. Since then, we've actually expanded what our therapy services look like. So now we have 4 therapists and an intern who provides licensed therapy one-on-one with people as much as they need. So we currently offer our work for free, and that's important because we know that access to mental health services has diminished because with the pandemic, people really started to understand the importance of reaching out for that help and working with therapists in particular. So luckily, everyone said, this is a thing that we want to do. This is how it is that we want to work through this time in our lives. Unfortunately, there is more demand than there is supply. So we expanded our services to help meet that supply, or meet that demand. Ooh, it's too early in the morning to say many words in a row. So in addition to that, our Safer Bar program is something that we have really just started investing in. We are currently working with a lot of bars that are in the Isthmus area, thanks to a grant from the City of Madison. And that we want to expand to other parts of Dane County, because again, this is not work that we do in a vacuum. This is work that we do in community with community. One of the other things that we are looking to do is also expand our education and outreach. So our education and outreach has been a program with RCC for a couple of decades, but the amount of time that we've spent in schools has dramatically increased over the last few years, and teachers and support staff and school districts are reaching out because they see what is happening to the youth. They are hearing from the youth that they want more support. One of the other things that's important to note, and we should have brought this up earlier when we were talking about things that you didn't know, our services, we are not mandated reporters. That's important. That's important, especially when talking with youth, because we can be a resource to let them know what this process looks like, what happens next, what to expect, instead of immediately bringing in law enforcement and CPS. Not that they aren't vital partners in this work, but giving that child a chance to say, here's what's happened to me, and we can then say, here's what's next. Here's what to expect. So having a space, again, confidential, that doesn't leave our area at all, and having that family navigate the system in the way that they feel best, so that they can comfortably say, here is where my point of entry should be. I would like to go to the hospital. Or my point of entry should be, I would like to talk to law enforcement, or I would like to talk to my school social worker, or a variety of different people, my doctor, who then can move forward with reporting in a way that feels comfortable for that teen or youth. So making sure that people know what resources are out there. We are but two. There are others. There are others that do this work, and all of our doors are open to support survivors at any point in time in your process. We regularly get calls from people who it's been 20 years and they're sitting at home and it's late, and they really just need someone to talk to. So they call our helpline and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. And sometimes just having someone there to listen is vital, it's important. So making sure that our access to our helpline is expanded. We are looking towards moving towards texting, because unlike me, who spent all of my teen years on the telephone, teens don't actually talk on the phone anymore. They seem to text. So we want to expand our services to include texting, so that, again, anytime that you need that help, you can pull out your phone and say, this is what I need help with. I just need someone to talk to. I need someone to say, we believe you, and we support the choices that you make. Another important thing that I want people to know, even though we've been talking a lot about the legal system and law enforcement, that is your choice, 100% all of the time. You can choose to work with law enforcement, or you can choose not to. We're here to support that choice either way. We know that with the Me Too movement, it has moved the needle, and people are saying, I'm going to talk more and I'm going to stand up more. Just in the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen the reporting numbers go up. It used to be a steady 25% of persons who were sexually assaulted reported that sexual assault. In the last few years, that has now moved up to 33%. And that's moved because we are talking about it, because we are in the schools, because we are saying we won't be relegated to behind the scenes and behind the door. We will instead shine the light on this problem that needs to be fixed, that needs to be addressed by everyone in our community, because this work doesn't just affect women, it affects men. It affects trans folks, and it affects non-binary folks. It affects everyone of every race. It affects everyone of every monetary background. So it doesn't matter if you are rich or you are in poverty, this is a universal experience that we would rather not be a universal experience. So having resources like UNIDOS, like RCC, like Freedom Inc., like DAYS, is vital to the health of our community. So I'm gonna get a little political. Sorry. What is it that you think that the community can do more of?
Sure. I wanted to talk about that because we have been talking about the community a lot, and thanks for all the information that you have shared with us today. And I think before we jump into that, like how the community can help, I think I want to highlight something that you said too, is the fact that we have to adapt to the needs of our community, and which is the pandemic. Making sure that our services were there for the community, and in a time of chaos, but we didn't know what to do, right? And mobilizing our staff, making sure that our staff was also safe, and that our services were open. And you mentioned many other realities, the texting now, right? It's no longer phone. Not everyone feels comfortable accessing or calling a phone, or now, for communities whose language is a barrier, its number one fear is calling someone because they don't know if the people on the other line speak their language, right? And if they're gonna be understood in the information that they share. So making our services accessible and adapt to the situation and to the realities is very important. And with that, and that's connected to what the community can do, donating. It's a great one, right?
Yes.
Today, the Big Share is your great opportunity, and throughout the year, but especially today, making a donation to our organizations, make sure that we can continue with this work, that we can continue sustaining our core services, our prevention program, our assistant advocacy program, and also coming in community to talk about it, to learn about our programs and how we serve the community, and the many barriers that victims, survivors, and communities of color face in that journey of seeking peace, seeking justice, seeking healing, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's number one. Volunteering too. We also need volunteers, right, to help us advance the missions of our organization. And how about you? What do you think the community needs?
So for me, what I want to see is engagement also on the political level. Reach out to your electeds and say, we want to see more of this work. Mm-hmm. We want to see affordable housing.
Yes.
Affordable housing is one of the number one issues that both of our organizations are continually struggling with. There's not enough homes here for the people that live, and there is not enough affordable homes for the people that live in Dane County. So reaching out to the people that you trust, that you elect, and say, I want to see something different. Looking at the services that are needed, for example, for human trafficking. Project Respect is one of the great organizations that works specifically and solely with victims of human trafficking. So how can we better support those victims? How can we better support communities of color? How do we better support the LGBTQ community to say, this is the baseline of services that everyone should get, because everyone benefits when all of us are lifted up. And that's important to know. And donate. Mm-hmm. Community Shares of Wisconsin is a unique type of organization that relies on community engagement and relies on everyone saying, this is the place that I live. This is the place that I care about. And I want to support the organizations that give services and give back to the community that I live in. And it's not that other places aren't great also, but Community Shares occupies a unique space in donations, in fundraising that is vital to our community. So not just supporting Community Shares and supporting partner organizations like ours today, but every day. Every day checking in to say, what is it that is needed? How is it that we can help? The thing that I find most, the thing that I find the best about anyone that I meet in this field is, how can I help? The first time that I met Virginia, it was, how can I help? How can I support? The first time that I met the staff that I work with now, it was, how can we help? How can we support? And so knowing that there are so many people that are out there that want to give that vital help, that want to give that vital support, is important.
Yes, and I think, Dana, we can also say, thank you to everyone who have donated so far, and those who plan to donate to our organizations today, and more importantly, to the staff.
Yes.
To our staff who are out there helping, making sure that our clients receive the support they need, to everyone that makes this work possible. Because again, we cannot do this work by ourselves. So big shout out to our staff, to all the advocates, counselors, support group facilitators who are out there in this community, to Project Respect, Days, UNIDOS, RCC, all doing very, very important work. So thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do in the community too.
Same, thank you. And we do want to thank Community Shares for having us, thanking them for this opportunity to talk about our work.